The boy stood barefoot on the metal dais, arms shackled, trembling. His eyes, wide, hollow, locked on the red light blinking atop the hovering broadcast drone. He couldn't have been more than 12. Dust blew across the barren outpost square of Dallin 4. Above, 3 Concord warships hovered in perfect silence, casting long shadows over the ragged crowd forced to watch. Locals, miners, elders, scavengers stood with heads down, fists clenched. Armed Zentari soldiers lined the perimeter in gleaming black exo-armor, unmoving, inhuman. A Zentari enforcer stepped forward, voice booming through a translator module. By order of Supreme Enforcer Draz Kai and the High Concord, the accused, Joro Reese, human, age 12, is found guilty of unauthorized education, dissemination of unregistered human history, and ideological contamination of minors. No reaction from the crowd. No sound. The boy's lips moved faintly, as if reciting something only he could hear. Sentence: immediate termination. In a secure room deep beneath Earth's surface, Commander Elias Rain stared at the broadcast feed. His jaw clenched. Blood rushed in his ears. Around him, aides and analysts held their breath. The walls were lined with monitors, Concord territory, human colonies, weapon tracking systems, but every screen now showed only the boy. "Is this confirmed?" Elias asked, voice low. "Yes, sir," replied a junior officer. "The charge is real. The boy was teaching Earth history to younger colonists, using contraband data cores. How long have they had him?" 3 days. Elias rubbed the scar running along his temple. This wasn't law, it was theater. Back on Dallin 4, the enforcer drew a plasma blade. It hissed to life, humming with contained fury. The boy didn't flinch. Instead, he turned to the camera. His eyes met the galaxy. "My name is Joro. History is not a crime." He said it softly, but the drone picked it up. The words echoed through living rooms, mess halls, bars, and starports. Across 100 worlds, humans watching stopped whatever they were doing. Conversations died. Eyes turned to screens. 1 second stretched like a lifetime. The blade fell. A collective gasp rippled across the galaxy. A high-pitched whine, a flash of heat, and the boy crumpled, silent and still. The enforcer deactivated his blade. "Let this be a message." The screen went black. Elias stood still, hand resting on the console. Around him, chaos broke loose. His comms exploded, ambassadors, journalists, rebel cells, Earth-aligned outposts all demanding a response. But Elias didn't speak. He stared at the blank monitor. The boy's voice rang in his ears. "History is not a crime." Memories hit hard, war zones, ceasefires, handshakes over graves. And one memory above all, a ceasefire day on the colony Valtor 6, 5 years ago. A much younger Joro, maybe 7, had tugged Elias' hand, gifting him a tiny white flower crushed in his grip. No words, just a hopeful look. Back then, Elias had smiled. Today, his hands curled into fists. He turned to his control desk. One button blinked red in the corner, long dormant, its label covered in dust, Scorched Sky Protocol. "Get me link clearance to Site Theta," Elias said. An aide hesitated. "Sir, that's dormant. From the last war. Not authorized under the current treaty." "I know what it is. But clearance. Now." The aide scrambled. Another voice cut in, Dr. Malia Kent, Earth's ethics officer. "Commander Rain, I need to advise restraint. I understand your grief. We all feel it. But this isn't about grief." Elias didn't look at her. "You'd start a war." "No," Elias said. "They already did. They just assumed we'd forgotten how to respond." The console blinked green. "Access granted?" He leaned in, eyes cold, voice calm. "Initiate protocol Scorched Sky. Authorize all dormant assets." "Sir, confirm authorization?" the system prompted. Elias pressed his palm to the scanner. "Authorization, Rain. Echo Tango 7. Execute." Somewhere in the silence of deep space, hundreds of tiny quantum beacons lit up. Inside Concord-owned worlds, unseen dormant units stirred. 8 minutes. 8 minutes before the reckoning began. Elias turned off the monitor. Broadcast nothing. Say nothing. Let the fire speak first. A lieutenant swallowed hard. What do we tell the diplomats? Elias stared into the distance. Tell them, we remembered the boy. The warheads didn't fall from the sky. They were already there. Microscopic. Buried. Integrated into fusion grids, power cores, water recyclers, hidden in the bones of every Concord world for nearly 3 decades. Ghosts from a war Earth had never truly ended. Not even Elias knew how many had been seeded. Only that it had been enough. 8 minutes. That was how long they had. Not to flee. Not to beg. But to understand. Back in Earth Command's secure bunker, silence hung like smoke. No alarms. No declarations of war. No dramatic launch codes. Just quiet. And countdown. Elias sat at the head of the war table, surrounded by blinking panels and unreadable faces. His expression hadn't changed since the moment the boy's body hit the ground. Stoic, unreadable. But beneath the surface, something burned, old, and feral. Dr. Malia Kent paced behind him, fidgeting with her earpiece. She was one of the few in the room who still believed in diplomacy. That was excessive, Elias. Elias didn't look at her. It was justice. It was a child, yes. A tragedy. But retaliation like this, indiscriminate destruction? You've flipped the kill switch on entire worlds. They did that the moment they filmed it. Malia exhaled sharply. So we answer murder with genocide? Elias turned now, slowly, like gravity had to shift to allow it. His eyes locked onto hers. You call it genocide, he said, voice flat. I call it precedent. Malia faltered. Across the room, Lieutenant Jean worked through comms silencing protocols. Every outbound signal from Earth had been locked. The media blackout was absolute. A blackout meant only one thing to those who understood: something irreversible had been set in motion. Sir, Jean called out. We're getting multiple pings from Concord diplomats. They're demanding answers. One of them invoked Treaty Clause 9, reckless galactic disruption. Elias almost smiled. They think we care about treaties now? No, sir. But they care that we're not talking back. Elias rose, stepped toward the side console, and called up a map of Concord territory. Over 40 marked planets. A red shimmer began blinking across the grid, quiet at first, barely visible. 2 minutes down. 6 left. I never wanted this. The thought came uninvited. Not regret. Just recognition. Elias had spent years building Earth's silence. The galaxy mistook it for passivity. But it had always been calculation. Let them believe the old wounds had healed. Let them believe the monsters had died with the last war. But monsters didn't die. They just learned to sleep with one eye open. A screen flared to life. A face, Colonel Thorne, commander of a black site base orbiting Europa. Commander, we're receiving activation signatures on all Sentinels. Orders confirmed. Are we initiating full cascade? Yes, Elias said. Acknowledged. For the record, it's good to be remembered, sir. The feed ended. A murmur in the room. Major Kale, who hadn't spoken until now, broke the silence. You remember Valtor 6, don't you? Elias didn't answer. Kale pressed on, voice quieter. The ceasefire day. The little boy, Jorel, he brought you that flower. It's him, right? Elias blinked slowly. Yes. A pause. I told him he could grow up in a better galaxy. And now? Elias finally looked away. Now I'll make sure no other child believes that lie. The lights flickered. A low hum began vibrating through the room. Silent systems awakening, unseen machines shifting course. It wasn't noise, it was the death rattle of 100 buried weapons realizing they were needed again. Elsewhere, citizens of Concord worlds lived as if nothing had happened. On Vokran Prime, a senator poured tea. On Centauri 4, engineers calibrated orbital mirrors. On MYRR's moon, children practiced drone races through canyon wind tunnels. 5 minutes left. Elias pressed 2 fingers against his temple. It wasn't pain. It was memory. He'd watched too many peace talks collapse. He'd buried soldiers beneath alien stars. He'd seen, firsthand, what order looked like when enforced by beings who saw humans as unruly primates with loud mouths and short tempers. They were right about the loud mouths. They were wrong about the temper. Earth didn't rage. It waited. And now it remembered. A screen near the corner pinged. Not a diplomatic message. A private one. Elias opened it. A woman's face. Mid-30s. Pale, worn. Tired eyes. She didn't speak. She held up a drawing, a child's drawing. Stick figures. One was labeled Jorel. The other, Commander Rain. A flower between them. The message was dated 2 years ago. She typed only 4 words. Please don't forget him. Elias stared at the words. He typed back. I never did. 3 minutes left. Malia spoke again, this time softer. We still have time to call it off. To show we're different. Elias closed the message window. I used to think restraint made us better. And now? Now I know restraint only works if they think you're willing to go further than they ever could. He turned back to the table. One last sweep of the map. Red blinked across every corner of the screen. Some barely visible. Others bright as stars. He placed both hands on the table. This wasn't vengeance, he said. This was the reminder. 2 minutes. No more words. It began without sound. On Vokran Prime, their coarse Sundra arrays hummed as usual. Then, without warning, a single filament in the fusion regulator shifted out of phase. The reaction didn't explode, it imploded, consuming the planet's atmosphere in less than 90 seconds. On Centauri 4, the Concord's cultural capital, high above the ivory skyline, a fleet of orbital mirrors adjusted to an alignment no engineer had authorized. They caught sunlight with perfect precision and redirected it downward. The city evaporated in a beam of pure thermal light. Screams never made it to the surface. On MYRR's moon, home to over 2 million laborers, gravity itself became the weapon. Hundreds of buried gravity spikes activated in sync. The moon tore itself apart from the inside, crumbling like wet sand under invisible hands. And this was only the beginning. Across 47 Concord-controlled planets, protocols seeded decades ago activated. No warheads. No soldiers. No declarations. Just judgment, executed by Earth's silent vengeance machine, flawless, invisible, untraceable. The galaxy blinked. Then it burned. In Earth Command, the war room was still. Monitors streamed data in real time: thermal loss, life signatures, orbital drift. Every number told the same story. It was over. Elias stood at the center of it, unmoving. His eyes never left the screen displaying Vokran Prime. The feed showed nothing now, just static where a thriving world had been. Lieutenant Jin's voice cracked as he spoke. All targets neutralized. Civilian estimates are high. Any retaliation? Elias asked. None. They didn't have time. Dr. Malia Kent approached slowly. Her hands trembled at her sides. She looked pale. How many dead? Elias didn't respond. She stepped closer. Do you know what you've done? I made sure they never do it again. Her voice broke. You killed entire worlds. No, he said, calm and final. They did. When they murdered a child to send a message. I just made sure the galaxy heard ours. Above the ruins of the Centauri throne world, Draz Kai stood alone in the collapsing hall of order. Walls cracked and burning. Air sucked out through breached glass. His guards were dead. His throne, a twisted ruin. Screens flickered above him, playing looped fragments from the broadcast. The boy. The blade. The stillness after. He reached for his comms. Static. Then a voice, distorted, quiet, unmistakably human, cut through. You should have left him alone. Then silence. Then fire. The entire command tower disintegrated mid-transmission. No trace remained. Back on Earth, hours later, the blackout lifted. The media feeds surged with chaos. News anchors choked on real-time footage, unable to explain. Experts debated. Concorde survivors wailed. Every human world watched the same replay. The boy. The execution. The aftermath. Hashtags swarmed. Protests erupted. In every language known to the stars, one phrase rose from the ashes. We are not prey. In a mountain school shelter on Mars, a teacher addressed her frightened students. Was it us? One child asked. No, she said softly. But it was for us. Elias sat alone in his quarters. The walls were quiet now. No commands. No alarms. Just silence. He held something in his hands, a small, worn flower. Pressed between plastic sheets, preserved from a forgotten ceasefire. Jor-El's flower. A memory bloomed. He had taken it awkwardly from the boy, unsure what to say. The child had simply smiled and whispered, Don't forget who we were. Elias now whispered back, I didn't. A knock. Major Kale entered, solemn. Sir, we have responses. Some worlds thank us. Others call us monsters. They're both right. Kale hesitated, then asked the question no one else dared. What do we do now? Elias looked up. Tired. Weathered. And for the first time, uncertain. We wait, he said. And we remember the cost. In a shattered crater on the edge of the burned Concorde frontier, a scavenger child found something untouched, an old data pad, still humming faintly. She turned it on. A video loaded. Jor-El's face appeared. Not from the execution, but earlier, months before. He looked into the lens, eyes bright. If you're watching this, it means something went wrong. But if you still believe, maybe we'll get it right next time. Maybe we'll remember that stories are what survive us. He smiled. The girl watched the whole message. Then tucked the pad into her bag and walked away. Final line. The galaxy had learned Earth's silence was not peace, it was a promise. There was no celebration. No banners. No speeches. No victory marches. Just ash, memory, and the heavy silence of a galaxy unsure how to breathe again. Elias Rain stood on the observation deck of Station 9, orbiting the rim of Earth's influence. The stars outside looked the same, but he knew better. Some of those lights were gone now, extinguished by decisions he had made. Aides passed behind him, speaking in clipped tones. Reports flooded in, refugee fleets from surviving Concorde outposts, internal revolts among alien empires, diplomatic silence from former allies. The galactic order hadn't just bent. It had cracked. He hadn't left the deck in 30 hours. Malia Kent found him there. You've eaten? She asked. No. She walked to the edge of the viewport beside him. You should. He nodded slightly but didn't move. A long pause stretched between them. Malia finally spoke. It's begun, you know. What? History. Revision. Interpretation. Denial. Some are saying you orchestrated the boy's death to justify retaliation. I expected that. Others are calling Jor-El a martyr. Statues already rising. Holograms. Songs. Elias exhaled through his nose. He didn't ask to be anything. No. But he became it anyway. On Cinder Station, hundreds of Concorde refugees huddled in oxygen bunkers. They whispered of Earth in frightened tones, like speaking its name might summon fire. Some blamed Zentari arrogance. Others praised Elias for restraint. He could have taken more, they said. In a hidden chamber, a small girl played Jor-El's final video again and again, mouthing his words. Earth's Unified Council convened in an emergency session. All major representatives attended, generals, diplomats, philosophers, architects of policy. But none spoke for several minutes. They simply stared at the screen. Burned planets. Uprooted alliances. An empire erased. Elias entered late. He didn't take a seat. "Commander," began Chancellor Greaves, "we need to define what this is." "A warning," Elias answered. "No. I mean politically. Legally. Morally. We're being called to answer for the deaths." "Then ask them who answered for Joral's." An ambassador raised her hand. "We understand your intent, Commander. But the cost was calculated," Elias said. "And accepted." Another ambassador stood. "Accepted by whom?" "By those who remember what it means to be human." A silence fell, but this time no one interrupted. They didn't agree, but they understood. Greaves spoke last. "The galaxy will rebuild. But it will not forget. Neither should we." "I don't plan to," Elias said. He walked out without another word. 3 months passed. In the ruins of Centauri 4, green shoots broke through the scorched crust. Life always returned, even to haunted soil. Scavenger crews salvaged technology and artifacts. In a melted atrium once used to display alien victories, a broken memorial plaque lay half-buried. It read, "Peace through order." A child kicked it aside. In a school beneath New Chicago, a history lesson played across a holographic screen. The children watched the famous broadcast, the one that changed everything. Most already knew Joral's name. The teacher, young and nervous, asked, "What do we learn from this?" A student raised her hand. "That silence can mean strength." Another raised theirs. "That some lines, once crossed, erase the idea of going back." The teacher nodded. Then said softly, "And sometimes, the cost of remembering is paid by those who never agreed to forget." Back aboard Station 9, Elias sat in his quarters for the first time in days. The flower Joral had once given him now floated in a sealed crystal vial on his desk. Preserved. Untouched. He tapped a console. A message had arrived. From Malia. No subject line. Just a quote. "We become what we're forced to become. But we must still choose who we are afterward." He stared at the words for a long time. Then he stood, walked to the mirror, and faced himself. Lines around his eyes. The scar at his temple. The eyes of a man who no longer carried certainty, but carried memory. He tapped into the command system. A new directive. "Deactivate scorched sky." Not delete. Not erase. Deactivate. Let it sleep again. Not as a threat, but as a lesson. 1 year later. On the outer edge of a newly reclaimed human colony, children gathered in a circle beneath the sky, listening to an old miner with cracked hands and soft eyes. He told them the story of a boy who stood tall even when the whole galaxy watched him fall. He told them about the man who remembered that boy. And how sometimes, remembering, was all it took to change everything. Final line. Humanity never started the fire. But it remembered how to burn when the stars forgot who they were lighting for.